Hello and good evening. This is Garrett Gross with Marketing Shop Talk. Today is going to be a little different because it's just me tonight. Tim and I have been trying to get together, and our schedules have just made it difficult to get together the last couple of weeks. So we decided that I was able to have some time to put a podcast together because we owe it to you guys, and we love doing these podcasts. We love trying to learn, and we hope that you guys follow along with us and learn with us. This is just a lot of fun. Marketing is super interesting to us, and we hope it's just as interesting to all of you. We really enjoy it. Like we say, we're just students of marketing. They're trying our best to learn and to grow in the subject. So we just want to bring you guys along the ride. It's a lot of fun, and we're learning a lot. So tonight, since this is a book that I've been kind of reading on the side, so it's not really marketing specific per se, but it's a really, really good book. It does have marketing in it, but it's primarily a business history book, and it's talking about the Schwinn Bicycle Company. So if you guys haven't noticed, I've worked in bike shops. I've been involved in the bicycle industry for a number of years. Been doing it for a long time, and so I find this interesting, and I find it interesting because I like bikes, but also, I mean, I've lived and seen some of the stuff. Maybe not necessarily in this book, but I get a lot of what's being said, so I really like it. Anyway, it's called No Hands, The Rise and Fall of the Schwinn Bicycle Company, an American Institution. It's by Judith Crown and Glenn Coleman. So, first of all, I would like to say that Judith and Glenn did a really good job putting this book together. Bike. They both start with B, right? So, great book. I really enjoy it. They did a really good job putting it together. It's been very interesting, and I think even if you're not into bicycles, you'll still find what they did and didn't do to be really quite interesting. So I really recommend it. I'll put a link in the description underneath the video, and I recommend you read it. It's a great big book. I'm not entirely sure if it's still in production, but I know that you can find it online. So anyway, hopefully it's on Amazon. That'd be the easiest link to put up, right? So I also, I have to admit, this is my second take at this podcast. So hopefully I can get it right this time. So we'll see. But anyway, there's a lot of really cool things that happen in this book, and it starts off. The beginning is a little slow because it talks about the history of bicycles. You know, we start off with is basically wheels and a 2x4, and you just straddle it and you just kick yourself around, and that was the first bike. It was this real rudimentary thing. They talk about that. They talk about the penny farthing a little bit, then they get into the safety bikes, which the safety bike to them is a modern bicycle to us. The wheels in front and back are the same size. It's chain driven. So when it gets into that, and it starts talking about the Schwinn Bicycle Company, it becomes a little more interesting. But if you want to learn about bicycle history, the beginning of the book is really cool too. Anyway, I'm going to jump around a little bit here. I'm going to skip the kind of boring stuff and jump into the first kind of big marketing thing that Inges Schwinn does. Inges was the founder of Schwinn. He was a German immigrant, came to the United States back in the early 1900s. Like he came to, yeah, he came off early 1900s, you know, but before the teens, basically, like 1904-ish, kind of in there. I don't remember exactly, but anyway, it's been a while since I've read this. This book's kind of big, and I'm towards the end. I'm not at the end, but I'm towards the end of the book, and so anyway, this is the beginning of the book. So anyway, I'm sure you understand. I'm sure you know. Anyway, so the big marketing thing that Inges did, and I didn't know this, but he was really interested in motorcycles. And so there was this motorcycle company that was doing not very well, and it was the Henderson Motorcycle Company. And there was the Exclusior motorcycles. And from what I remember, I'm kind of scanning it right now, but what I remember, like Henderson was like the Chevy of the motorcycles, and Exclusior was like the Cadillac. So I think they were owned kind of by the same company, but they were separate. Anyway, I'm not sure. I could be wrong, and I probably should have reread this before I talked about it for my second take, but I didn't do that. So anyway, we're just gonna roll with that. But anyway, so Schwinn buys it because he's really interested in motorcycles, and he decides to take them and merge the logos and kind of rebrand it. So he took the Exclusior trademark X logo and he put it behind the Henderson name, and so he kind of rebranded it. And he did a really, really good job of this. In fact, the book talks about how the Exclusior Henderson motorcycle company was right there with Harley Davidson and Indian. So they were the big three in the motorcycle world, like Ford, Chevy, and Dodge, right? So he becomes quite successful in this, and he doesn't really include Schwinn into the motorcycle. He kind of keeps bicycles and motorcycles separate, but he brings those two brands together and he co-brands them. And co-branding is really cool. I kind of want to touch on that. If you don't know what it is, you've definitely seen it. A really good example is where Taco Bell got with Doritos to make taco shells. You know, that's that's co-branding. If you haven't tried it, it is really good. I really recommend that taco. It's pretty dang awesome. Anyway, so that was kind of one of the really big things that he did, and like I said, he was considered one of the big three in the motorcycle world and became really, really successful. He did that because he brought brands that were respected, were kind of dying, and he brought them back and he did really well. He was able to market it. He was featured in let's see, in a trade magazine called American Bicyclists and Motorcyclists. That was done in 1921. If that gives you any reference there, which was really interesting. He just did really, really well with it, and he marketed it. They don't really talk a lot about the marketing that he did with the motorcycle company, but he did do well for a long time until I think it was World War II started, and getting metal for the motorcycles was difficult, and so they kind of had to scrap it. They had to scrap the project, which they were really sad about, but it was World War II. So anyway, I thought that was really just kind of a noteworthy thing. I thought it was really cool, kind of a neat example of co-branding. And that's really the only time I think Schwinn ever co-branded anything during their history before they sold themselves to Pacific Cycle, which is now sold in Walmart. So modern Schwinns are Pacific Cycles now. Anyway, I'm sure that's more than you really care to know. But that was really interesting, really kind of cool that they did that. But the big thing that I really want to talk about is something they did much later. It's kind of towards the middle of the book, and it takes us into the 60s. And Schwinn they were not doing very well at this point. You'll notice in this book, if you read it or if you know anything about Schwinn, that they like do really well and then they do poorly, and then they do really well and they do poorly, and it's kind of this up and down cycle of success for the company. And by success, I mean sales. Sales are good, revenue's good, and the company is thriving. So they kind of have these really big up and down moments. So anyway, in the 60s, they're not doing well. I think it was the 60s. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. I should have reread the book, but I didn't. Anyway, they're not doing very well, and bicycles in general at this point weren't doing very well. I mean that goes for all the bicycle companies. And really, the fault of it all was just cars, motorcycles. Just more practical, easier ways to get around. And so it just everybody put the bicycle kind of on this limelight, and Schwinn realized that they were marketing to the wrong people. They they noticed that kids were still riding bikes a lot, and so what they did is they came up with the Stingray. Now the Stingray, I'm sure some of you know of it, and if you don't know, if you don't think you know of it, I'm sure that you do. The Stingray is that classic Schwinn. It's got the big banana seat on it and the side knob shifter. If you were really cool, you had that one. But that was the classic. That was the classic kid's bike right there, the Schwinn Stingray. And anybody who was anybody had it. And even if you weren't anybody who was anybody, you wanted it. I mean, it was just the bike to have. It was really cool. And they designed this really, really cool bike, and then they marketed it to kids, like the whole Santa Claus thing, birthdays, or the cool kid on the block. They just did this marketing for kids and built the hype up. And it was kind of easy to do because the bike was so cool looking anyway, especially with that side knob shifter thing. So it was like an old motorcycle or something. I mean, just really, really cool. And kids went nuts over this bike. And this bike at the time was kind of expensive. Like, I think back in the 60s or something, it was selling for like, I don't know, $100. I can't remember, but it was kind of expensive back then for a kid's bike. But they sold tons of them because they marketed it to the right crowd, and it was made for that crowd. They specifically made that bike for kids, and that's why kids fell head over heels for it, just because it looked really cool. Parents thought it was really cool. I mean, I've said this, but it was a cool bike, and they did a really good job marketing it. And that bike alone made the Schwinn company millions of dollars way back in the day, millions. And that's not including the Varsity. I don't think the Phantom was out by that point, which the Phantom is another really classic Schwinn bike that made a lot of money for the company. But it was just it made them millions. They killed it. They killed it with the Stingray. And copycat companies, like I think Huffy at the time, were making copycats of it because it was so popular, and not everybody could afford the Schwinn. Of course, the Schwinn was the quality product, and it cost more, and it was American made, and it was all super cool, but not everybody could afford it, and that allowed copycats to come in and make it cheaper. But anyway, so I guess that's another thing to watch out for marketing is copycatting, right? We talked about that a little bit. Copycats are pretty annoying. But anyway, so they killed it, and I don't remember the specifics. Like I said, it's been a little bit since I've read it, but they did a good job with posters, with radio, especially radio at this point. TV at that time, because TV existed at this point in Schwinn's history. Well, I mean, it's kind of funny because Schwinn went through like the time they started basically before the radio, maybe when the radio started, but a really long time ago. And so they marketed through that time period, and then the time period with radio, and then like the Great Depression and the two World Wars, and then the 60s, and TV start, like the Schwinn. The Schwinn bicycle company is really cool because they had to market through all that time. And if you read this book, you can kind of see how they had to do things to change their marketing, refine their marketing, learn what they did from the past to be able to market through these different decades. So anyway, They killed it with the Stingray by recognizing their target market they thought would make them money wasn't making money. So they recognized they had a target market problem. They made a new product and targeted another target audience, kids. And that is all they needed to do to go from possible bankruptcy to making millions selling bicycles. That is all they had to do. And it's so funny because it's just like this little thing, but it took them forever to figure it out. Like it's funny. Maybe it isn't a little thing. Maybe that's the wrong word to use, but it was just really interesting, I thought. So another marketing thing that was really interesting, and I want to talk about it because I have personal experience with this style of marketing. Is back so we were like in the 60s, so we're gonna go back to like the 50s now. So we're gonna jump earlier into the book now. At least I think. I think if I remember the book chronologically, I think this is before. So Schwinn had another problem during another one of their dips. They did kind of an internal study, and they figured out that they had millions, and well, not millions, but they had thousands of dealers in the United States, people selling Schwinns, but their sales weren't very good. And so they were wondering, how do we have all these dealers, but we're not selling anything? So they took representatives and put them out to look at and find all these dealers. And they discovered a ton of these dealers were basically people just working in their garage. I mean, they didn't have a storefront. A lot of these guys didn't have education. Like if you're familiar with bicycles at all, that you can get some bikes that have a hub that's got gears on the inside, internal gears. A lot of old school bikes have that, but these hubs, they're made by a few companies, but this hub in particular is a Strummy Archer 3-speed internal hub. So you had 3 gears that you could use. They found that one of these garage mechanics, like he didn't know how to work on them. And so when they would go bad, which they eventually would, it ended up being a really simple fix. Like all I had to do was take it apart, lube it up, put it back together, and it would have worked. But he didn't know how to do that. So he was taking the Strummy Archers off all of these Schwinns and putting a new single-speed hub in and relacing the hub to the wheel. And he was doing that. And Schwinn was like, oh my gosh, like not only are a ton of these mechanics just not educated, but a ton of them are just selling out of their garage, or they have an account with us, but they don't buy anything with us. Anyway, the list goes on and on, right? So Schwinn does a purge of all these dealers. They got rid of hundreds of dealers. And most of these dealers were their bad customers, right? So the Schwinn's customer is a dealer, and they got rid of a ton of them. And most of them were the ones that were uneducated, like they were really small and really uneducated, or they weren't selling anything, they just had an account, whatever. They purged them, they fired their bad customers, right? And then what they did is they took their dealers that were doing okay, or maybe a little bit better than some, and they sent a team to the shop. They either sent a team to the shops, or the really nice shops, they would bring like the owner of the bicycle shop to the Schwinn headquarters. And then they would teach them stuff. They would teach them how to work and repair and fix the Strummy Archer hub. They would teach them how to true wheels better. They would teach them how to align the frame if it got into a crash and the frame was bent. They would teach them those things, and they would also teach them why Schwinn did what it did, why their processes were the way they were, because Schwinn felt like doing it this way made the bicycle better for this reason. They educated them. And after Schwinn purged their bad dealers and educated these other dealers, their sales went through the roof again. It was crazy. They made millions selling bicycles. It was incredible. And that's all they had to do. And I want to touch on that because a lot of these books that Tim and I have been reading, How to Become a Marketing Superstar, Duct Tape Marketing, I mean, all of these books have the same thing in common, and that thing is basically educating your audience. Okay, well, finding your audience, defining your audience, your target market, educating them, getting them excited about it, basically through education, getting excited about the product, and building trust. And they built trust by teaching their dealers, right? And so they did those four things, and they just crushed it. They did so well. Like they were so far ahead of any other bicycle manufacturer. It was crazy, just nuts. And they were untouchable, and that's all they did. That is all they did, and they were unstoppable, totally unstoppable. And I wanted to touch on that because I went through this myself. So yeah, I used to work in a bicycle shop in Logan, northern Utah. For you guys, people don't know where that is. And we would have reps that would come and teach us about the bicycles that we sold. The special, and it was really interesting because when the Specialized rep would come, he would come and teach us about the Specialized bike and the technology and all the cool bits and pieces and this and that. And it was funny because then we started selling more Specialized bikes, and we were all getting really excited about Specialized. And then the Trek rep would come, and he would teach us about Trek, and then we would get excited about Trek, and then Trek sales would go up. And so it was this constant thing, and we got educated. We were built trust with the company. Now we sold more, and the public became excited about it because we were excited about it. It was really cool to firsthand see that thing. The thing that Schwinn did forever ago was implemented when I was working at that shop by a different company, and it totally works. Totally worked. It was really cool. Now, to contrast that, I worked for another bike shop in southern New Mexico, and we sold a company. I am not going to mention them because I just don't like their bikes. I just don't. But I don't want to bag on anybody's bike because anyway, I just don't. So they this company never sent a rep to us ever, never ever, and not only that, the bicycles that they sold, they had so many. They had so many bikes, it was crazy, and they had so many levels of different bikes. So you could get the same bike in 3 different aluminum alloy frames, or you could get it in the carbon version. But then the carbon version had like 3 different levels in it, and then in that they also had a bunch of component differences, and it was like that for their different road bikes, endurance and race and gravel grind. And then they had that for the mountain bikes, cross country, all mountain, enduro. Like it was just, they just had tons and tons, and they never sent anybody to educate us or to get excited about it or to have us gain confidence in the product. And the whole time I was at that shop, I sold, I don't know, like 2 of that brand the whole time. I sold tons of the other brand that we had. I really like him. Trek, I'll say him because we sold tons of them, but this other brand I didn't because I didn't trust him and I didn't like him and I had no reason to because they didn't send anybody to get me excited about him. So in fact, the only time I met somebody from that company was when I was at Interbike, and the rep didn't spend a lot of time with me because we weren't a very big account. So it was kind of the self-fulfilling prophecy. So I say that to say that I've personally gone through that process as the consumer, as the customer of the company, right? Like, and that education aspect, that aspect of getting people excited about your product, about reaching the right people, about building that trust is just, they talk about it in the books, but I know it's true. I know it's important because I've personally gone through it, and I've been the consumer and the seller of that product, and it's just key. It's really, really important, and I'm sure a lot of you know that. A lot of you guys that are listening are interested or do marketing to some degree. So I know you know, but it's just I feel like it's just really important, and it's kind of funny. It's not. You'd think it would be really well unanimously understood, but if you look at a lot of billboards or a lot of ads, you can tell that even a lot of pro marketers don't fully get it. Like, for example, here I'll go on a little tangent. I went on a business trip up to Utah to meet some clients up in northern Utah. And so I drove there, and all along the Wasatch Front, from like Spanish Fork to basically Brigham City, there's just billboards everywhere. And it's really funny. You can tell the marketers that get it with billboards because they're really simple, they're quick to understand, they're very visual, and memorable, and you can just tell. Like there's like Domo. Domo is a company. They're a marketing company, so they get it right. But their billboards were just really really simple. Some of them would say funny things, and it was just quick to understand. The one thing I didn't do that I thought that they didn't do super well was they didn't like say what they were. I had to Google them to figure it out. But maybe that's what they wanted, and if that's what they wanted, then it worked, right? But then there was other billboards that were just awful, just absolutely terrible. And the contrast, the reason why they were so terrible is that the text was too small, or it was hard to read. They had like a black background with dark blue letters. Like it was hard to read, or there was just too much going on. The pictures had a lot going on. Like there's this billboard of a lawyer up there, and well, it's fun. Okay, so lawyers. There's two lawyers that I saw. One is Siegfried and Jensen. I saw his billboard a lot, and then I saw Robert J. DeBry. His billboards. They're all over up there. But anyway, the Siegfried and Jensen one, I felt like there was just a lot going on in that picture. Like it had the picture of this truck busting through this wall, and if you're hurt, call us. Blah 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 blah. Right? And I felt, I don't know. It's not like he had bad marketing, but I felt like the picture was just, there was a lot going on. A lot going on. It was kind of distracting. But the Robert J. DeBry one had really simple, like stick figure pictures that would depict a simple thing, like there was this car with the little, like that hit, that like bumped into this person, and this person's like rubbing his hip, and it had like the little lightning thing going on for pain, right? Like very comic book, very stick figure-ish. But there wasn't a lot going on, and it wasn't super busy. And I thought that was a really good picture. I thought that it wasn't distracting. I understood what it was really quickly. Where the Siegfried one, the picture was kind of busy and kind of complex, and it was kind of distracting from the other information. Again, this is a personal opinion, but I'm sure you've seen billboards that are really wordy, that are really complex, and that you don't really remember their message. But the simple ones do remember the message, like what I told you about, like Domo, right? They're really really simple, really fast to understand. Got what was going on. So, and it was simple enough that I could get home from the drive and then Google what they were, too. That's something to remember as well. And I'm sure a lot of you know that, but I just feel like it's important. Anyway, marketing, as you know, as we've been studying, is just really important. It's really powerful. It's important to selling your product, and it can be a very powerful way to do that. And as we can see, Schwinn, they had their tough times, but when they got their marketing right, they got it right. They made millions. And so, anyway, just super interesting book. I'm gonna, as I do these solo podcasts, I'm probably just gonna keep doing this book because it's so big, and there's a lot that's going on in that book. I hope you enjoyed this solo podcast. I had some fun doing it. Definitely a little harder with Tim, or without Tim. I really enjoy having him here, but hopefully next week we can get together with him. And if not, then there'll be another solo one, but that's okay. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave comments. Please leave comments or message us, ask us questions. Let us know what you think. Tell me if you have a different opinion than me, because I'd be really interested. And like I say, I really want to learn, and that's the whole point of this podcast, is just to learn about marketing, what it is, how to utilize it, what's important, what's not important, or what you think you should do but maybe you shouldn't do, or whatever. It's this is just a big learning thing for all of us, and I hope you enjoyed it, and hope you have a great night. Sorry it's been kind of a long time since we put a podcast up. It's been about 2 weeks, which has been too long. So anyway, I hope you have a good night, or I guess if you're listening to this other than night, then have a good day. And we will talk to you again.